The zigzag cable we're going to make in this movie is really just a series of 1 stitch by 1 stitch crosses. Crosses are made every other row, and because they are, a pattern is traced on a stockinette background. I will be showing you 7 stitches involved in the cable, but the same principle can be applied to a much larger number of stitches or a smaller number if you want to. Here the zigzag cables are being used on the Masterpiece sweater, and they are also present on this baby blanket, both of which will be in my new upcoming cable book called Mostly Classic Cables. If you hand knit, you may have come across a similar technique called traveling cables. And if you enjoy this kind of cable, you may enjoy my book Wanderlust Cables, which explores them in great detail with lots of patterns. Here's a sneak peek at the Masterpiece sweater, which will be in that Mostly Classic Cables book. I've already begun the cable, which is coming up in this line, and it'll be more visible shortly. These are columns of tuck stitches to either side of it to set it off, because we work this entire cable on knit stitches, and the ditch created by these tuck rib stitches will set it off and make it more obvious, but it would show just on the stockinette anyway. In another example, you'll see that I place the stitches on either side on the ribber, so it shows up really well against a background of pearls. Ready to knit 2 rows. 1, 2. Now I crossed these 2 stitches left over right last time, and that ended the zigzag going this direction. Begin making the zigzag go back the other direction. I will cross them right over left. These are all just 1 stitch by 1 stitch crosses. I don't have to work this right now. We can just do it every few rows. When I write a pattern using this, I provide a chart, and you can count up the chart and find which stitches should be involved. But it's also helpful to learn how to read through the fabric. I can see that I crossed this direction, so here's my traveling stitch. The one next to it is really the background stitch. So right over left, because I want the traveling stitch to remain in front, and that's what will make it in front, to resettle it first. Knit 2 more rows. Now the traveling stitch is here, so we want to move it once more, again keeping it in front. More than thinking of right over left, think of keeping it in front. Knit 2 rows. Here's the traveling stitch, so pick it up, as well as the background stitch that's going to trade places with it. Replace the traveling stitch first, and the other one second. Now is a good time to stop and do a little bit of the tuck rib. We can read right up this column, make sure we're in the right place, put the tool in the stitch that was hung last time, slide behind one rung, grab the second, and pull through. Behind one, grab the second, pull through. All the way up the column, and replace the last stitch on its original needle. Now there should be 7 stitches involved in this cable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a good time to double check that we have left all 7 knit stitches with the cable working across them, and the next one over is the tuck rib column that will set the whole thing apart. To review, you do not have to have a tuck rib column because it will show anyway, the cable will, but this just creates a little bit of extra drama. And another review, an alternate way to do that, to create more drama, is have the stitches that adjoin the cable stitches on the ribber. And notice I did not, for this one, plan to cross these last two. Second from the end cable stitch is as far as I'm planning for this zigzag to go. You could do it and it would just create a different look, but I'm only really moving to and fro on 5 of the 7 stitches. Time to knit 2 rows. Now here comes something to remember, at least to get this exact look. We cross the same stitches again, but this time we reverse the order. The one in my left hand that I'm bouncing around, that is the traveling stitch that we want to have remain on the front of the fabric. So now it's left over right, and that's why it's most helpful to think of the continuity of your cable rather than whether it's left over right. The cross we just made starts the process of moving back to the right, and it's ready to have the traveling stitch pick up and move to the right again, and the background stitch be hung behind. We can see the cross on the row below if we get confused. One nice thing, this zigzag is a very easy example, but you can make parallel zigzag lines, even picture-like things that look like flowers and hearts, and all kinds of charts that will help you make interesting designs are in my Wanderlust Cables book. This particular design is also being used in the Masterpiece sweater for my newest cable book, which will be called Mostly Classic Cables, because that's what it is. We are as far right as I plan to go. Let's drop and relatch. 1, 2, 3. The effective tuck rib, as opposed to ordinary rib, is to widen that column a little bit, which means that we get the cable that we're working on set aside more dramatically without a lot more work. And up we go. You can also set up your ribber to do this by placing this stitch on the ribber and setting the ribber to knit 1 row and tuck the next, as for half fisherman's rib. Okay, here we are. We're as far to the right as the stitch is going to travel, and now we do exactly what we did on the other side. We cross the same 2 stitches this time as last time, but the traveling stitch is still this one, so now it's moving to the left, whereas last time it got to this needle by moving to the right. And on we go.